The first time my wife tried to smother our newborn son, I thought I was imagining it. But I wasn't. My name is Michael Carter, I'm 30 years old, and I live in Columbus, Ohio. My wife, Jessica, is 27. We'd only been married for 11 months when she told me she wanted to start a family. Against my better judgment, I said yes. On our wedding night, Jessica had rented out a hotel room covered in balloons and rose petals, like something out of a cheesy romantic movie. I thought it was sweet at the time. Just 3 weeks later, she was waving a pregnancy test in my face, squealing with excitement. At first, everything felt perfect. We spent weekends flipping through baby catalogs and arguing about names for hours. But there was one problem: Jessica didn't really have friends. The 2 girls she'd been close to were still living back in Akron, and the women at her office either disliked her or kept their distance. Wanting her to feel supported, I found a local women's group at the library that met twice a week. I thought it would help her feel less alone. But the night I dropped her off was the last time I ever saw the woman I married. Because the person who came home wasn't Jessica anymore. Normally, when she saw me waiting for her in the car, she'd run over and wrap her arms around me, and I'd spin her until she laughed. But that night, she just stood there, staring. There was something in her eyes I'd never seen before, hatred. Then, almost instantly, she smiled, like nothing had happened. She told me the group had gone really well. I forced myself to smile back. I had no idea it was the calm before the storm. She kept attending every Tuesday and Thursday. Soon it was the highlight of her week. 3 months later, she walked in one night glowing, rubbing her belly. "I can't wait for our baby girl," she said softly. I laughed and reminded her we didn't know the gender yet. That's when her face turned ice cold. "I don't need an ultrasound," she said flatly. My body would never bring another man into this world. I thought she was joking. Until she gagged like the very thought of a son made her sick. "Jess, come on," I said carefully. "Boy or girl, it's our baby. That's what matters." She turned away, scrolling on her phone. I gently tapped her shoulder to get her attention. Her head snapped around. "Don't you dare," she hissed. "You'll never understand. You're one of them." The word stung worse than a slap. I called her sister, Hannah, later that night. She told me Jessica had always been easily influenced by the wrong crowds. Usually it passed. But she promised that if the baby was a boy and anything went wrong, her family would step in. That gave me a little hope. But hope didn't last. At the 20-week ultrasound, the technician smiled and announced, "It's a boy." Jessica shoved the wand away. "Check again." "You're wrong." The tech said carefully, "I've been doing this for 15 years. Look here." I said, "Check again." Jessica screamed, lunging at her. I had to hold her back until security arrived. The day our son was born should have been the happiest of my life. Instead, it felt like a nightmare. When the nurses confirmed it was a boy, I jumped up with joy. Jessica only screamed louder, like the news hurt more than labor itself. When baby Liam was finally placed in her arms, she didn't smile. Didn't cry. Didn't kiss him. She just held him stiffly, her face blank, like he wasn't her child at all. I should have seen it coming. Because that first night at home, when I left her alone with Liam for just a few minutes, I almost lost him forever. And that wasn't the worst of it. Not even close. The night we brought Liam home should have been peaceful. Instead, it felt like a countdown. I told Jessica her family had offered to take the baby in for a little while. I thought she'd argue, cry, or at least hesitate. But her response was instant. "Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes," she said, like I'd just given her the best news of her life. That stung more than I can explain. I told her her parents would be coming in an hour. She nodded and laid down for a nap with Liam. His last nap with her. I went downstairs, turned on the TV, and tried to breathe. But then I heard it, Liam's cries. They weren't normal cries. They were panicked, muffled. My heart dropped. I sprinted up the stairs, calling Jessica's name. The nursery door was locked. Something in my gut told me the truth before I even touched the handle. I pounded on the door, begging her to open it, but she didn't answer. I threw my shoulder against the frame, once, twice, and finally kicked it open. What I saw still makes my hands shake. Jessica was lying on top of Liam, her full weight pressing down. His tiny face was already bruising. "Jessica!" I screamed, ripping her off him. Liam gasped, wheezing, but he was alive. It was an accident, she insisted, eyes wide with fake innocence. But when I checked the baby monitor footage later, I saw it all: Jessica locking the door, climbing onto him, pressing down with her eyes wide open. It was planned. By the time her family arrived, I'd already packed Liam's diaper bag with shaking hands, bottles, clothes, formula, everything. Jessica just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me. Her mother grabbed Liam immediately. He was still crying, bruises already forming on his little arms. Her father's face was pale. They didn't say much, just promised to keep him safe. That same night, I moved into the guest room. I couldn't even look at her. The next morning, I changed every lock in the house while she was at her women's group. I backed up the baby monitor footage and hid the drive in my car. Something told me I'd need it. When she came home, she was angrier than usual. She stormed into Liam's nursery and started ripping it apart. "This room needs to be cleansed of his presence," she snapped, throwing decals and blankets into boxes. By Thursday, most of Liam's things were gone. I caught her loading boxes into her car. "Where are you taking those?" I asked. She ignored me and drove off. That evening, I noticed the baby monitor's SD card was missing. My stomach dropped. Friday morning, I found a note on the kitchen counter, written in her neat handwriting. "The custody situation will be corrected sooner than you think. No child should be kept from their mother." My hands shook as I read it. I called her parents immediately to warn them. They promised Liam was fine, eating better already. They said someone was always watching him. But by the next morning, I realized Jessica wasn't just angry. She was dangerous. When I walked outside to head to work, all 4 of my car tires were slashed. Rubber shredded down to the rims. A flyer was tucked under my windshield wiper, handwritten in bold black ink. It accused me of misogyny, child abuse, and weaponizing the patriarchy against a vulnerable new mother. Her words. Her handwriting. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't going to end quietly. Not with Jessica. By the second week without Liam in the house, the silence was unbearable. His cries used to keep me up at night, but now the absence of them felt worse. Every creak of the floorboards made me think Jessica was sneaking into my room. I kept replaying the baby monitor footage in my head. The way she deliberately locked the door. The way she pressed down with her eyes open. That wasn't postpartum depression. That wasn't stress. That was intent. But part of me, the stupid, desperate part, still wanted to believe this was just hormones. That if I reached her, if I reminded her who she used to be, maybe she'd snap out of it. Because the Jessica I married wasn't this. I remember when we first met at a 4th of July barbecue in Dayton. She had these big brown eyes and a laugh that carried across the yard. I burned 3 burgers that day because I couldn't stop looking at her. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't cold. She was the kind of woman who cried at commercials and left notes in my lunchbox saying, "You've got this." That Jessica is gone. The one living in my house now was someone else entirely. By Tuesday, things escalated again. I came home from work and found every photo of Liam missing. Frames ripped off the walls, albums emptied. When I confronted her, Jessica stood in the hallway with that eerie calm smile. "He doesn't exist in this house anymore," she said. "He's my son, Jess." "Our son," I snapped. Her smile twitched into something darker. Not a son. A parasite. You wouldn't understand, you're infected with the same disease. I didn't know what to say. I just walked away before I said something I couldn't take back. 2 nights later, I woke up to the sound of glass shattering downstairs. My heart pounded as I grabbed the baseball, but I kept by the bed. I crept down the stairs and found the back door wide open, shards of broken glass on the floor. But nothing was stolen. On the counter was a stack of printed flyers. The same handwriting, the same accusations as before. Only now she had added Liam's name. Michael Carter is unfit. He endangers Liam. He weaponizes patriarchy against vulnerable mothers. She was building a case against me, a fake one. That's when I realized Jessica wasn't just trying to erase Liam from our home. She was trying to erase me as his father. And she wasn't working alone. Because the next morning, I saw a strange car parked across the street. Same car showed up that night. And the next. Whoever it was, they weren't hiding the fact they were watching me. By the 3rd week, it wasn't just paranoia anymore. Jessica had moved from strange notes and slashed tires to outright warfare. It started with my job. I got called into HR after someone filed an anonymous complaint accusing me of being abusive to women in the workplace. The complaint included screenshots from fake emails I had supposedly sent. They were full of vile things I would never say. The HR rep slid the papers across the desk, her eyes full of pity. "This doesn't look good, Michael." I knew exactly who was behind it. Jessica was trying to ruin me in every possible way so that if it came down to custody, I wouldn't stand a chance. That night, I drove to her parents' house to check on Liam. Her mom held him in her arms when I arrived, and for the first time in weeks, I felt my chest loosen. His tiny hand grabbed my finger, and he cooed like he knew I needed it. But the relief didn't last. As I was leaving, headlights lit up the driveway. Jessica's car. She stormed out before the engine even cut. "You think you can steal my child?" she screamed, pointing at me like I was the criminal. "Jess, you almost killed him," I shot back. "You don't get to rewrite that." Her face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this. You'll see." Her father had to physically hold her back while her mother hurried me and Liam inside. I'll never forget the look in Jessica's eyes as she screamed over her dad's shoulder, like a predator promising she'd come back for the kill. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the guest room at her parents' house, listening to every creak, every sound outside. At 2 a.m., the dog started barking. I looked out the window and froze. Jessica was in the yard, in the rain, clutching a baby blanket. Liam's blanket. She was swaying back and forth, whispering something I couldn't make out. Her mother called the police. By the time they arrived, Jessica was gone. The next day, I found my car keyed from bumper to bumper. The words "baby thief" scratched deep into the paint. And then came the phone call. It was from a blocked number, but I knew her voice instantly. Calm, cold, measured. "You can change the locks, Michael. You can hide him. But he belongs to me. And sooner or later, I'm coming to get him." I hung up, hands shaking so bad I could barely breathe. Because I realized something then, this wasn't about anger anymore. It wasn't about hormones or even obsession. Jessica was planning something. Something bigger than slashed tires and broken glass. And I had no idea how far she'd go. But I was about to find out. The breaking point came on a Thursday night. I had just finished work late and drove straight to Jessica's parents' house, where Liam had been staying. When I pulled up, I noticed the front door was slightly open. My stomach sank. Inside, the living room was chaos. Lamps knocked over, a chair tipped on its side. Jessica's mother was on the couch, shaking and pale. "She was here," she whispered. "She tried to take him." My chest went cold. I bolted upstairs and found Liam's crib empty. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mind was already picturing the worst. But then her father came stumbling down the hall, clutching Liam tight against his chest. His face was red, his breathing ragged. "She tried to rip him out of my arms," he said. If the neighbor hadn't called 911 when she saw her climbing the fence, he stopped, looking down at Liam, who was wailing, terrified. The police showed up minutes later. Jessica was found 2 blocks away, barefoot, carrying a diaper bag stuffed with knives, rope, and baby formula. They put her in handcuffs while she screamed about liberating Liam from male corruption. I stood there in the rain, my son sobbing in my arms, watching the woman I once loved transform into a stranger I didn't recognize. The cops asked if I wanted to press charges. My voice barely worked. "Yes," I said. "Every single one." That night, I stayed awake on the couch, rocking Liam while he finally drifted off against my chest. His tiny breaths warmed my shirt, and I promised him out loud, "You'll never go back to her. I don't care what it takes. You're safe now." But the truth is, even with her locked up, I still see her face when I close my eyes. The way she looked at me, like she'd already decided I was her enemy. Like Liam wasn't a baby, but a trophy in a war only she was fighting. And sometimes, when I'm driving home late at night, I catch myself checking the mirrors over and over, half expecting to see her car trailing behind me. Because even though she's gone, I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over.